The scent of the Varela workshop was woven into my soul. Damp earth from the clay mordant pots, the subtle sweetness of drying madder root, the sharp tang of indigo, the comforting aroma of aged wood from the looms my grandfather built. It was the smell of history, of artistry, of a legacy I felt entrusted to protect. For 3 generations, Varela textiles had been synonymous with quality, known throughout the region, and whispered about in exclusive artisan circles, for its hand-woven fabrics and breathtaking natural dyes. But now, standing beside my mother in the heart of the workshop, that legacy felt fragile, threatened. Elena, darling, I know you love these old ways, my mother Isabella said, her voice laced with a familiar blend of affection and exasperation. She gestured vaguely towards the shelves lined with skeins of yarn, glowing with the deep, complex hues only nature could provide. Crimson from cochineal, gold from weld, soft blues from woad. But we must be practical, realistic. Varela needs to modernize if it's going to survive. Marco has a vision for the future. My older brother, Marco, stood beside her, arms crossed, radiating an impatient confidence that always set my teeth on edge. His vision involved stainless steel, chemical dyes, computerized looms, and mass-market appeal. It involved erasing the very essence of Varela. 6 months had passed since my father's sudden death, 6 months during which Marco, the favored son, the one groomed for business while I was allowed to apprentice with my grandmother, Amalia, had systematically worked on our mother, convincing her that tradition was a liability, not an asset. He painted vivid pictures of increased profits, market expansion, a streamlined operation free from the time-consuming, inefficient methods I championed. Methods taught to me by Grandma Amalia, the true heart of Varela, whose hands, stained with decades of natural pigments, had coaxed magic from plants and fibers. Mama, these techniques are unique, I pleaded, my voice tight. The depth of color, the way the light catches the hand-spun fibers, the slight variations that prove authenticity, that's what makes Varela special. Our clients value that. They seek us out for it. Marco scoffed, a dismissive sound that cut deeper than any overt criticism. Some clients, Elena. Niche clients. Rich hobbyists. It's not sustainable. We need volume, efficiency, profit margins. You're too attached, too sentimental. My mother nodded, her gaze sliding away from the vibrant yarns towards Marco's confident stance. She trusted his business sense, his easy charm, his promises of financial security. She had never possessed the patience or the deep understanding required for the alchemy of natural dyeing, the intuitive feel for the looms. She saw the long hours, the painstaking process, the fluctuating costs of rare ingredients. Marco showed her spreadsheets predicting exponential growth. Grandma Amalia had passed 5 years prior, leaving me as the sole keeper of her intricate knowledge she had shared patiently over years, guiding my hands, training my eye. She had seen Marco's disinterest, his focus always on the final sale rather than the creation itself. Your hands understand the threads, Elena, she'd told me once, her own gnarled fingers gently guiding mine over a complex weave pattern. Marco's understand only the calculator. Now, facing Marco's triumphant smirk and my mother's acquiescing silence, I felt a profound sense of loss, not just for myself, but for my grandmother's life work. The decision, delivered formally by the family lawyer the next day, was devastating, but not unexpected. Marco was granted full operational control of Varela Textiles. My inheritance was reduced to a minority, non-voting shareholding, and a vague, insulting title, heritage consultant. I was effectively sidelined, silenced, a relic in my own home while Marco was given free rein to dismantle everything I held dear. He didn't waste time. Within weeks, the rhythmic clatter of the old wooden looms was replaced by the monotonous drone of new industrial machines ordered from Germany. The earthy scents of the dye shed were overpowered by the acrid fumes of chemical dyes arriving in large plastic drums. Marco, with his characteristic lack of subtlety, announced a modernization sale to clear out the old inventory. The last precious bolts of fabric dyed with my grandmother's techniques, the very textiles that held the Varela signature. He spoke enthusiastically about launching new lines, polyester blends in garish, consistent colors, simple weaves suitable for fast fashion suppliers. He even took meetings with large discount retailers, companies my father and grandmother would have shuddered even to acknowledge. I retreated into my work, fulfilling my consultant duties by meticulously archiving old pattern books and dye samples. Tasks Marco deemed unimportant, but which felt like the only way I could still honor my grandmother's memory. Each day was a fresh wave of grief as I watched the soul of Varela being systematically bleached away, replaced by Marco's cheap, synthetic vision of the future. He saw fabrics. I saw stories woven with light, color, and history. He saw profit. I saw a legacy turning to dust. The transition was brutal. Marco, empowered and emboldened, moved with alarming speed. The skilled older weavers, who had worked alongside my father and grandmother for decades, struggled to adapt to the speed and impersonality of the new automated looms. Their intuitive understanding of fiber tension and hand-adjusted rhythms was useless now. They became machine operators, their artistry rendered obsolete. Several quit in quiet frustration, replaced by younger, less experienced workers content to simply monitor the machines. The dye shed, once my sanctuary, became a place I avoided. The vats that had held simmering concoctions of roots, barks, and flowers now churned with synthetic colors, flat, uniform, predictable. Marco hired a technician with a basic understanding of chemical dyeing, but neither he nor the technician grasped the complex interplay of fiber, mordant, water temperature, and time that gave natural dyes their unique depth and luminosity. The early results of their synthetic dyeing were inconsistent, sometimes streaky, lacking the richness Varela was known for. Marco dismissed these as teething problems, easily fixed with more chemicals, more standardization. My role as a heritage consultant became increasingly farcical. Marco would occasionally ask me to identify an old fabric sample for a potential client interested in vintage, or to provide a brief, romanticized history of the company for a marketing brochure, a history he was actively erasing. He ignored my suggestions for incorporating traditional elements into new designs, or my warnings about the long-term damage the harsh chemicals might do to the new machinery, let alone the environment. I was a ghost in the machine, a decorative footnote in his grand modernization plan. My mother remained willfully blind, dazzled by Marco's projections and reassurances. "It's a transition period, Elena," she'd say soothingly when I tried to voice my concerns. "Marco assures me these new methods are perfectly safe, much more efficient. We have to trust his judgment. He has the business degree, after all." She conveniently forgot that Grandma Amalia, with only a primary school education, had built Varela's reputation through sheer talent, intuition, and relentless dedication to quality, qualities Marco utterly lacked. The evenings became my only refuge. I retreated to my small attic room, the one that had once been my grandmother's study, surrounded by her books, her sketches, her boxes of meticulously labeled dried plants and mineral pigments. It was there, seeking solace among her belongings, one rainy night, that I rediscovered the notebook. I had glanced through it years ago, recognizing the dye recipes, but I hadn't truly studied it. Now, with a desperate need to reconnect with her wisdom, I examined it page by page. It was far more than just recipes. It was a detailed chronicle of a lifetime spent in pursuit of color. Complex, multi-stage processes were described with scientific precision, noting subtle variations needed for different fibers, different seasons, even different weather conditions. There were sketches of rare plants, notes on where to find them, often in remote, difficult-to-access locations. And then I found the section I'd overlooked before: suppliers. Not just names and addresses, but detailed accounts of relationships built over generations. The family in the mountains who exclusively harvested a specific lichen needed for a rare violet dye, only trading with Amalia because her grandfather had saved theirs from ruin decades ago. The coastal community that gathered a particular seaweed for a unique fixing agent, a relationship cemented by Amalia's support for their local school. These weren't commercial suppliers Marco could simply look up. They were part of a fragile ecosystem of trust and tradition. And then, tucked into a sleeve glued inside the back cover, I found the folded, slightly brittle copy of the patent certificate. U.S. Patent Number 4815XXX. Woven fabric with integrated geometric pattern. The intricate, almost holographic, pattern depicted was unmistakable. It was the complex weave structure my grandmother had perfected, the one requiring exceptional skill on a handloom, and which interacted so beautifully with her natural dyes, creating a subtle shimmer. The patent was registered solely in her name, Amalia Varela, and crucially it was still active, with several years left before expiration. Marco didn't know. He couldn't know. He had dismissed the traditional looms, the complex patterns, the natural dyes, the very elements protected by this document, as obsolete. He likely thought any old designs belonged vaguely to the company, unaware of this specific, legally protected intellectual property tied directly to the methods he was discarding. A slow-burning ember of an idea ignited within me. This notebook, this patent, they weren't just relics of the past. They were leverage. They were a lifeline. They were the key to preserving my grandmother's legacy, even if it couldn't be within the walls of Varela Textiles anymore. I scanned the patent certificate and key pages from the notebook, saving encrypted copies to a secure cloud drive. I researched patent law, confirming its validity and scope. The weave pattern itself, intrinsically linked to the hand-weaving process and the specific properties of naturally dyed fibers, was protected. Marco's machines, his synthetic threads, they couldn't replicate it legally or technically. The path forward was still hazy, fraught with risk, but for the first time since my father's death, I felt a flicker of hope, a spark of defiance. Marco thought he was burying the past. He had no idea I held the map to its resurrection. The discovery of the patent and the depth of the notebook lit a fire under my grief. The vague sense of injustice sharpened into a focused determination. I couldn't save Varela Textiles from Marco's ambition, but I could save the soul of Varela, my grandmother's true legacy. The first step was to gauge the potential. The world Marco was chasing, fast fashion, mass production, held no appeal for me, but I knew there was a growing market, albeit niche, for exactly what. Varela used to represent sustainable, artisanal, high-quality craft with a story. I spent hours researching online, identifying designers, boutiques, and collectives focused on ethical fashion and heritage textiles. That's how I rediscovered Anya Sharma. I remembered seeing her work featured in a craft journal years ago. Stunning contemporary designs using traditional Indian block printing and hand-woven fabrics. Her brand ethos centered on sustainability and empowering artisans. She seemed like someone who would understand. Drafting the email to her felt like stepping off a cliff. I introduced myself, briefly explained my situation, the family business takeover, the threatened heritage techniques, and attached high-resolution photos of fabric samples dyed with my grandmother's methods, showcasing the unique colors and the patented weave. I mentioned the exclusive supplier network and the patent itself, framing it not as a plea for help, but as a potential collaboration, offering unique, ethically sourced materials with a rich backstory. Anya's reply, arriving less than 24 hours later, was more enthusiastic than I could have hoped for. She was immediately captivated by the colors, the story, and the exclusivity. She confessed she'd long admired Varela's older work, lamenting its recent disappearance from the high-end market. She proposed a video call. Our conversation lasted 2 hours. I showed her the notebook via screen share, explained the complexity of the dyeing processes, the history behind the suppliers. Anya, in turn, outlined her vision for a capsule collection using these unique textiles, targeting a high-end market. Willing to pay a premium for authenticity and sustainability. She had connections with ethical manufacturers, buyers at luxury boutiques, and influential journalists in the sustainable fashion sphere. She also had access to seed funding through a green investment fund she worked with. "Elena, this is incredible," she'd said, her eyes shining with excitement. "This isn't just fabric, it's living history. Marco is an idiot. What he sees as waste, we can turn into gold. Let's do this. Let's create something beautiful and show them what they threw away." We agreed on the framework of a partnership. Anya would provide initial funding, marketing expertise, and industry connections. I would bring the proprietary knowledge, the supplier relationships, the patent rights, which I legally controlled as the inheritor of my grandmother's personal intellectual property, separate from the general company assets, and the artistic direction. We decided on a name, Amalia's Heritage Threads, honoring my grandmother directly. The next few weeks were a blur of clandestine activity. While maintaining my facade as the marginalized heritage consultant at Varela during the day, my evenings and weekends were consumed with building our new venture. I flew to London to meet Anya in person, finalizing our partnership agreement with her sharp, supportive lawyers. We secured a small workshop space in a nearby town known for its artisan community, modest but with good light and enough room for a few looms and dye vats. Then came the delicate task of contacting the suppliers. I traveled to the remote mountain village to meet with the family who harvested the rare lichen. Showing them my grandmother's notebook, speaking their local dialect which Amalia had taught me, I explained my plan to continue her work independently. Their relief was palpable. They had been deeply concerned when Varela's orders stopped, fearing their own tradition would die out. They pledged their exclusive supply to heritage threads. I made similar journeys, reconnecting with the coastal community for the seaweed fixer and tracing the source of other rare pigments, rebuilding the network based on the trust my grandmother had fostered. Back at the Varela workshop, Marco remained oblivious. He was too busy dealing with quality control issues from the new machines and trying to negotiate bulk deals for his cheap synthetics. He occasionally commented on my tired appearance, suggesting the lack of real work was making me lethargic. I merely smiled. The final step was resignation. I typed a simple, formal letter addressed to Marco and my mother, stating my departure from the role of heritage consultant effective immediately. I didn't explain, didn't accuse. I simply stated that my vision for preserving the Varela heritage differed fundamentally from the company's current direction. I left the letter on the desk in the now silent, dusty office that had once been my father's, placed my symbolic keycard beside it, and walked out of Varela Textiles for the last time. There was no sadness, only a sense of liberation, like shedding a skin that no longer fit. The looms were waiting. The dyes were ready. Amalia's Heritage Threads was about to be woven into existence. The launch of Amalia's Heritage Threads was planned with strategic precision. Anya Sharma leveraged her considerable influence, securing us a coveted spot at Artisans Éthiques, a prestigious sustainable craft and design fair held in Paris 3 months after my departure from Varela. It was the perfect venue to introduce our brand to discerning buyers, influential press, and the high-end market we were targeting. Our booth was small but impactful. We didn't display racks of finished garments, but rather focused on the textiles themselves, draped bolts of fabric showcasing the luminous natural dyes and the intricate, patented weave. We had large, beautifully printed cards telling the story of Amalia Varela, the heritage techniques, the natural ingredients, and our commitment to ethical sourcing. I was there, alongside Anya, ready to explain the processes, answer questions, and embody the living connection to the craft. The response was instantaneous and overwhelming. Designers lingered, running their hands over the fabrics, marveling at the depth of color and the unique texture. Boutique owners from London, Milan, and New York were captivated by the exclusivity and the compelling narrative. Sustainable fashion bloggers and journalists crowded the booth, eager for interviews. The patented weave, in particular, drew gasps. Its subtle complexity was unlike anything mass-produced. Anya expertly handled the business inquiries while I spoke passionately about the dyeing processes, showing samples of the raw ingredients, sharing anecdotes about my grandmother. People weren't just buying fabric. They were buying a piece of history, a connection to authentic craftsmanship. By the end of the 3-day fair, we had secured orders far exceeding our initial production capacity. We had features lined up in major sustainable fashion publications. We had established partnerships with several high-end international boutiques. Heritage Threads wasn't just launched, it had exploded onto the scene. News travels fast in the relatively small world of textiles. Back home, word of Heritage Threads' triumphant debut reached Varela Textiles. I heard through the local grapevine, former weavers who still kept in touch, that Marco was initially dismissive, then furious. He apparently couldn't comprehend how I, the sentimental dreamer, could achieve such success so quickly, especially using the obsolete methods he'd discarded. His fury likely intensified when his own attempts to showcase Varela's new direction at a concurrent, larger trade show fell flat. Buyers complained about the generic designs and the synthetic feel of the fabrics. His chemical dyes lacked the vibrancy and uniqueness needed to stand out. Several long-term clients, upon seeing the new Varela offerings and hearing about heritage threads, quietly canceled their remaining orders with Marco. The contrast was stark. While heritage threads was being celebrated for its authenticity and quality, Varela was struggling with returns due to color bleeding from improperly fixed chemical dyes and technical issues with the automated looms producing inconsistent weave quality. Marco, according to my sources, blamed the machinery, the technicians, the market, everyone but himself and his flawed strategy. He reportedly tried to contact the suppliers my grandmother had used, only to be politely but firmly told their loyalty now lay with heritage threads and the keeper of Amalia Varela's true methods. He even allegedly made inquiries about replicating the patented weave, only for his lawyers to likely inform him of the significant legal risks involved. The financial pressure on Varela mounted. The investment in new machinery wasn't yielding the promised returns. The loss of high-margin heritage clients couldn't be offset by the low-margin bulk orders Marco chased. My mother, I heard, was growing increasingly anxious, the cracks in Marco's confident facade becoming harder to ignore. She tried calling me several times, leaving hesitant voicemails hinting at reconciliation, at finding a way forward together. I didn't return her calls. The time for that had passed. She had made her choice when she sided with Marco and dismissed my passion as mere sentimentality. While Varela floundered, Heritage Threads carefully managed its growth. We hired skilled, local artisans, including some of the weavers who had left Varela, paying them fair wages and honoring their craft. We established meticulous quality control, ensuring every meter of fabric met the standards my grandmother would have demanded. Anya managed the brand brilliantly, building our reputation, securing collaborations with renowned designers, and ensuring our story was told effectively. We remained small-scale by choice, focusing on quality over quantity, exclusivity over ubiquity. Our price point was high, but clients were willing to pay for the unique product and the ethical story behind it. The success felt validating, but also slightly surreal. It wasn't just about proving Marco and my mother wrong, it was about proving my grandmother right. Her belief in the enduring value of nature, skill, and tradition was being affirmed with every order, every feature, every piece of fabric woven with care and colored by the earth. The threads of her legacy were not only saved, they were being woven into a vibrant new tapestry. A year can change everything. 12 months after walking away from the hollowed-out shell of Varela Textiles, I stood in the bustling, light-filled workshop of Amalia's Heritage Threads. The air hummed with the gentle rhythm of hand looms operated by artisans whose skills were now valued and celebrated. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating fabrics that glowed with the iridescence of madder root, indigo, weld, and cochineal. Our order book was full for the next 6 months, with a waiting list beyond that. Heritage Threads had become a darling of the sustainable luxury market. Our collaboration with Anya Sharma had produced an award-winning collection featured in Vogue. We were supplying exclusive textiles to high-end interior designers and bespoke fashion houses across Europe and North America. We had expanded modestly, hiring more local craftspeople and initiating an apprenticeship program to pass on the natural dyeing skills, ensuring the knowledge wouldn't be lost again. I had even started researching ways to cultivate some of the rarer dye plants locally, creating a truly circular, regenerative system. The recognition was deeply gratifying. I had accepted an award on behalf of the company for preserving artisanal heritage. Speaking at conferences, I shared not just the beauty of the craft, but the importance of valuing traditional knowledge and ethical practices in a world obsessed with speed and disposability. My story resonated, offering a counter-narrative to the fast fashion Goliaths. And Varela Textiles? The news came quietly, almost as an afterthought in the local business journal. Facing insurmountable debts and a tarnished reputation, the company had been forced into receivership. The new machinery Marco had invested so heavily in was sold off at a fraction of its cost. The historic workshop building itself, stripped of its soul and its purpose, was auctioned to a property developer planning to convert it into generic office spaces. Marco, I heard, had left town, blaming the global economy, imports, anything, but his own disastrous decisions. My mother remained in the family home, now too large and quiet. A mutual acquaintance mentioned she was deeply regretful, finally understanding the value of what had been lost, not just the business, but the connection to her own mother's legacy, which she had allowed Marco to sever. She had tried reaching out again, sending a handwritten letter expressing remorse and a desire to see the Heritage Threads workshop. I read the letter, felt a pang of sadness for the relationship that might have been, but knew that door was closed. The betrayal had cut too deep, the divergence in values too fundamental. My focus now was forward, on nurturing the living legacy I had fought to protect. One crisp autumn afternoon, Anya visited the workshop, bringing with her a bottle of organic champagne and a wide smile. "Elena," she announced, holding up a copy of a prestigious international design magazine, turned to page 58. There it was, a multi-page feature on Amalia's heritage threads, titled The Weaver's Daughter, How Passion. And Principal revived a lost art. It detailed our journey, showcasing the stunning textiles, the artisans at work, and featuring an interview with me. But the final paragraph struck me most. In an industry often chasing the new and the cheap, Heritage Threads stands as a powerful testament to the enduring allure of authenticity. It proves that true legacy isn't found in maximizing profit margins, but in honoring the skill, the story, and the soul woven into every thread. It's a lesson one family learned the hard way, allowing their true inheritance to unravel, only for it to be rewoven, stronger and more beautiful than ever, by the one who understood its worth. Anya raised her glass. To Amalia. And to you, Elena. You didn't just save her legacy, you gave it new life. We toasted, the champagne bubbles catching, the light like the subtle shimmer in our unique patented weave. Looking around the workshop, seeing the vibrant colors, hearing the gentle rhythm of the looms, watching the skilled hands transform simple yarn into art, I felt a profound sense of peace. This wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about creation, about connection, about honoring the slow, patient magic passed down from my grandmother. Marco had tried to erase her, and by extension me. But like the natural dyes we used, the roots ran deep. The heritage couldn't be extinguished. It had simply found new ground in which to flourish. The threads were secure,